Capital gains tax. When you make an income in Australia, or most of the civilized world, the government's going to take a part of it. So capital gains are a form of income. The government taxes that income. However, what the government tries to do in Australia is they try to encourage people to hold on to their shares for at least 1 year. Okay? So the part of your capital gain that is actually taxable is known as the taxable capital gain. It's like, this is how much money I earned. The government might look at all of that for tax purposes, or they might only look at part of that for tax purposes. The taxable capital gain, the amount of money that the government actually looks at, changes depending on how long you've held the shares for. So if you hold on to your shares for less than 1 year, what's the capital gain that they're looking at? This is recording right now for YouTube, so if you want to be a star or something, you can talk. Otherwise, it's going to be a while. Okay. It's looking at the whole capital gain if you hold on to your shares for less than 1 year. If you hold on to the shares for more than 1 year, how much of the capital gain is the government looking at? If I'm timesing something by 0.5, what fraction of the whole? It's half. What's better for you? If the government is going to tax you, say, they're going to take 30% of your money. Do you want the government to take 30% of all of your money or 30% of half of your money? Yes. Can you see how they're encouraging people to hold on to the shares longer by doing that? So I'll give you some writing time to get that formula there. That would go into your cheat sheet. That your taxable capital gain, what the government looks like, if you bought and sold the shares in less than a year, they look at the whole thing. If you bought and sold the shares in less than a year, the government only taxes half of it, which is in your best interest. Really what they're trying to do is the government wants, the only people getting taxed fully is like actual share traders. It's their job to do that. Okay? They're buying and selling shares every day. Whereas you and me, they want you to hold on to your shares for a long time. And they're also trying to protect you from making a bad decision and then losing all your money. Scroll down a bit. In Australia, the tax you pay depends on your overall income from the year. That includes any money you're going to make on the shares. This is important to think about because you use a tax table like this. This is from your book. This table in green is what you're going to use to answer the questions in your exercises. You need this tax rate to work out how much the government's going to take away from you. So this has literally changed this year. So I'm a bit better off actually this year because I think they've removed this one this year. So 37%. So they're like taxing everyone up to 180 grand, only 32.5. So that's great for me. Okay. But it always changes, and the fact that it always changes, you do not need this on your cheat sheet. If SACE ever wants you to do tax, they'll either give you the table or they'll just tell you what the rate is because it's literally always changing. Okay? So you don't need to copy this into your cheat sheet. I'm just showing you to be aware of it, and that's what you're going to use for your exercises in the book for capital gains tax. All right? To calculate capital gains tax, you clearly need to know your overall income to work out what your tax rate is. Then you can use the following formulae to find the capital gains tax and your after-tax return. So you're not copying that table down, but you are getting, can you get these couple of formula here? Capital gains tax is your taxable capital gain times by the rate as a decimal, and then your after-tax return is the money that you are supposed to make, take away what the government is taxing. Get that down, start getting the example as well. So I'll give you some writing time for this and the example so we can smash through that real quick. Let's have a look at this example. What I'd encourage you to do is, a lot of people in the past years have found it useful to underline stuff that's important in the questions or highlight it. Is it important in this question that it was Cassie?
No.
No one cares. Is it important that they purchased 3,000 shares? Underline it. Is it important that they bought them for $6.75 each? Probably. And sold them for $8.98? In this context, because I've told you that buying and selling the shares within a year or over a year is important, do you reckon it's important that there was bought and sold 9 months later? Is that going to come into it possibly? Yeah. Highlight that. Brokerage is 2%, highlight that. And also because I told you that the tax rate depends on your whole income plus shares, do you reckon it's important to consider Cassie's actual salary? Keep those in mind. Calculate Cassie's capital gain. So, in the previous... I need to set this to viewing. Yeah, that's seamless. Why can't I? Okay, I need to switch. I need to go across pages, my bad. Calculate Cassie's capital gain. What do I need to know to find a capital gain? It was in the first formula, in the first video.
The return for selling.
Good. And?
Cost of money.
Good. So I need to do a buy and a sell. So we're doing this. Buy. What are the 3 parts of a buy calculation?
Consideration.
Yep.
Brokerage and GST.
And what do I do with those numbers? Do I add them or take them? Add, because I want to know the overall cost of it. The consideration in this case is going to be 3,000 times by $6.75 is going to be a number. I'm setting up my calculations here. What is brokerage as a decimal? 2%. What would that be as a decimal?
0.02.
Good. 0.02 times by something. And GST is going to be 0.1 times by something. Now I'll whip out the calculator. And I'm going to go 3 grand times by $6.75. Is a number, 20,250. I have 20,250 in my calculator right now. I can times that by 0.02, which is 405. And then 0.1 times by 405 is going to be $40.50. Because it's addition, I can just count downwards. I don't need to use a calculator here. It might save me some time. 5, 5 and 4, 9, 4 and 2, 6. $20,695.50 to buy those shares. Okay? Sell. What are the 3 parts of a selling calculation? Yes?
The same.
Yeah. It's like someone died in here. Have you done any of the homework? Have I shown you the graph that I liked last year? If you're not treating your year 12 properly, there's a graph that I like to say. There's the F around and find out. And if you're going to F around, you're going to find out. It's a direct relationship. Do the homework. Help me out. What is the consideration going to be here? If I'm selling, how many shares am I selling?
3,000.
Yeah. What am I selling them for?
8.98.
Good. 3 grand. Oh, I'll start over. 3 grand times by 8.98. 26,940. So they've made money. That's nice. 26,940. Brokerage is, we're assuming it's the same. 26,940 times by 0.02. That was already in my calculator. $538.80. GST is 0.1 times by $538.80. That's going to be $53.88. Can I just do the subtractions vertically here? Can I take 3 things at a time, or is it only 2 at a time?
2 at a time.
2 at a time. So use your calculator for this. Okay. 269.40 minus 538.8 is a number minus $53.88. So I'm going to make $26,347.32 from selling. Do I have everything I need to find the capital gain?
Yeah.
Yep. So now, yeah, it won't let me scroll. I'm going to have to write. I'm going to do something tricky because my page isn't letting me. $263,447.32. 2069550. That's not going to appear on the recording, but this is not letting me turn pages nicely. So the cap gain is going to be what number take what? Which of these numbers is the return from selling? The bigger one? Can you always assume there's going to be the bigger one?
No.
Because if it was not the bigger one, is it possible to lose money on a share? Yeah. So don't always assume it's the bigger one. Minus 20695.50 minus 2695.5. So I made $5651.82 capital gain. Okay? I'll give you some writing time for that. What was B asking? B is asking, calculate the taxable capital gain for Cassie. Taxable cap gain. Did she buy and sell the shares in over a year or less than a year?
Less.
Less than a year. How much of your capital gain is the government looking at if you only held them for less than a year? All of it. So this number stays the same. You could remind yourself it was less than 1 year. C, calculate the capital gains tax Cassie must pay. For us to work that out, we need to look at this table. She earned 90 grand a year. So based on her income only, what tax rate is she using?
37.
The government's taking 37% of her money. Now she made like under 6 grand of capital gains. Does that push her anywhere else, or does she still remain at 37?
It remains.
She still remains there, okay? There's one example on your timeline where the shares will push you across. And if you know me, I'm a bit of a troll in your test questions. Maybe just keep that in mind. That the shares could push you into a different tax rate, okay? She's going to stay here at 37%, all right? So the capital gains tax is going to be the taxable capital gain times by the marginal tax rate, which we just said was 37%. So cap gains tax equals the taxable capital gain, $5651.82 times by, what's 37% as a decimal? Yep. Times by 0.37. $20.91.17 rounded to 2 decimal points. So that is the capital gains tax. And quickly squeeze over to D. Calculate Cassie's after-tax return. D, after-tax return, ATR. How much money is Cassie supposed to get from buying and selling those shares?
5651.
Good. And then the government's taking a little bit of it. How much is the government taking of her cash?
$8,091.17.
Good. So how do I find her after-tax return? The amount of money I get after tax is going to be $5,651.82 minus $20.91.17. 5651.82 minus 2091.17. $3,560.65. Okay. There is one last question there about E. And like I've said, this example is the same sort of steps that you'll encounter in your test. It's worth 6 marks. So I'm trying to help you out as much as possible. Okay? This can be the decider. What does it ask for? If Cassie could ensure she sold the shares the same price, but after 12 months, how much better off would she be? Based on what we've talked about before, is it better to hold on to your shares for more than a year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good, because why? The government's only going to take 37% of half of this. Your capital gain's still going to remain at $5,651.82, but they're going to take less. So can someone explain to me, if the question is asking, how much better off am I? What steps should I use? What numbers do I need to find?
Half of the original capital gain.
Good. So, after 1 year, you're going to be going 5651.82 times by 0.5. 5651.82. So the government is only going to be taxing, the government is going to be taking 37% of 2825.91. So the new taxable cap gain. Okay? What do I need to work out now? There's actually multiple ways to answer this. If that's what the government's going to tax, have I worked out how much tax the government will take yet?
No.
How would I find it?
Times that by 0.35.
Yeah.
Lisa?
So 2825.91 times by 0.37 times by 0.37. 1045.59. New tax. Do I have all the numbers I need to actually answer the question to tell me how much better off I am? Some people, and in my example for your practice test, I go all the way and work out what the after-tax return here is and then minus them. But I can actually answer the question now. Because does this tell me how much tax I paid before? Does this tell me how much tax I'm paying now?
Yeah.
Am I better off by doing this? They're only taxing me this much. This is smaller than that. So what could I do to work out how much better off I am? Better off by?
Old tax minus the new tax.
Yes. So, you take away. Well, if you took this away from that, it would be a negative answer, but it's still giving you the same number. Doesn't matter which way around you do it. 2091.17 minus 1045.59 equals 1045.59 to 2dp better off. Then if you actually look at that, there's a cheat as well, because that it's just half of what the old tax was. Okay? Alright. So I'll give you writing time. I'm going to shut my mouth now.
But technically you wouldn't have to do that, you just half what you paid.
But I wanted to logic out all of
Yeah.
the working out. But if you can see, because I've shown you all of the working out, if you see a shortcut, it's not like between now and the test, the government's taking a different the government's looking at a different percentage. It's always going to be 50%. So then the shortcut will still work if you acknowledge it here. So that's me done for today. I'll stop the recording.